Well, hello, my lovelies. It's the Elsa Kurt Show, and I am Elsa Kurt. Thank you guys for joining me. Today, I'm going to have Molly DeFrank on, and she's going to be talking to us about how to detox from technology, or more specifically, how to help our kids detox. And I could use the detox too. So we'll do that right after this. Molly, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm so happy to have you here.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So the first thing I have to say is you're a mom of six. You look like the most perfect little petite thing. You're amazing.
You're very sweet to say that. Yeah, it is. They definitely keep me busy.
I bet. I bet. Do you mind telling me the age ranges, how old your kids are?
Yes, my oldest is 12. She'll be 13 this year. And then I have an 11-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 9-year-old, and two 6-year-olds and a 5-year-old.
Wow. Yeah, so
I hope
you're
I
my
got that
idol
right.
right now.
No, you're
Oh,
you're kind.
okay. So now you've written a book. It's called, I want to make sure I get it exactly right, Digital Detox, the 2-week tech reset for kids. Correct?
That's
Yeah. Okay,
exactly
good.
right.
Okay, good.
Exactly.
So now tell me, first of all, when did you notice in your own home that the technology addiction or use was over the top? What made you realize that?
I think that so probably about 3 years ago was when we did our detox with our kids. But before that, leading up to it, we liked technology for our kids. We liked the tablets and the shows and all video games. But we always noticed after screen time there was like a collapsing of attitudes and some intense sibling fighting. And it's one of those things in parenting that sort of like rubs you the wrong way, but you got to move on with your day. And then finally one day I came home, I was running errands, and one of my kids greeted me with, "Can I play on your phone?" instead of like, "Hi, mommy." And so that was it for me. I'm like, "You're so cute. Why are you saying this? This is something is off." So I called my husband and I said, "I think we need to pull the plug." And he's like, "Let's do it." So we told the kids at dinner that night, and they were not really happy about it because they love their devices. And I was
Sure.
really terrified, but we went for it.
That's amazing. And was it cold turkey? Like that night you said, okay, everybody, that's it. This is the last thing you're punching in or the last, game you're playing, and now we're done.
So we said starting tomorrow. So it was just
Mhm.
enough time for them to like the whole weeping and gnashing of teeth, like, they were really upset about it. But morning rolled around and we kind of told them it's not punishment for anything. It's just we're trying something new. We think it'll be really good for you guys. And that didn't really help diminish their disappointment because they love technology. But when morning rolled around, they didn't even ask for a device because they knew it was off the table. We're like, "Don't even ask. We're doing this. So, don't bother." And they didn't. And lo and behold, they started playing with the toys on their shelves. They started playing with each other, getting creative, starting clubs. It was like, it blew our minds how quickly their creativity started exploding. So it was awesome. We were shocked.
That's so awesome. Now, I mean, still, it had to have been so difficult because now, did you and your husband like join in with that? It's obviously harder for adults too because it's so much a part of what we use for business purposes and everything. So it had to be limited for you guys what you could eliminate, right?
So actually, I get this question a lot. We didn't. So my oldest was 10 at the time or 9. And it was kind of one of those things where when your kids are young enough, and this is what I recommend to parents, if your kids are young enough and they're using digital entertainment like a tablet or watching a show or YouTube now and then, you can kind of say, "You guys aren't doing this anymore for now." It's kind of like, when you tell your kids they have an 8 p.m. bedtime, parents don't necessarily have to also go to bed at 8 p.m. But as your kids get older, and we found that older kids I've helped their parents through these detoxes, that parenting role transitions from like authority to kind of coach, mentor. So for the older kids, especially like the tweens and the teens, parents do need to get a little skin in the game. I've had some parents who have done like a social media detox alongside their older kids just to kind of show some buy-in. So for those bigger kids, I recommend sort of approaching it like you would a Whole30, like recruiting it to get your people on board. We're going to try this thing. It's going to be great. Here's why. I've been reading about it. I think it's an awesome opportunity, and, you know, expect some grumbling. But yeah, the older the kids, the more parents need to buy in.
Sure, that makes perfect sense. And, you know, you made such a great point too that, you know, because I'm sure that's the first reaction, you know, with pretty much anything that our kids say to us, you know, when you tell them to do something or to not do something, the first thing they say is, you know, well, how come you can, you know, or how come the older sibling can, or, you know, and it's, the answer is usually, you know, if you're an old school mom, like I was, my kids are grown, but, you know, old school is, it was because I said so, you know, which now they, you know, now the parents of today give more explanation to their kids than we used
That's
to
true.
back in the day. But
Yeah, that's so true.
right. Now, who do you think, who had the hardest time? I'm going to assume that it would be your oldest at the time because they've had a longer period of time using technology. Was that the case, or were you surprised at all?
You know, one of the blessings of having our kids so close in age is that it it didn't really work out that way. So I think we kind of started this detox before she got into that age. She didn't have a phone yet. And I would tell parents it's a lot simpler to begin then, when your kids are a little younger. So the book is geared primarily to parents up to like 12 and 13, if your kids are 12 and 13. But that said, the principles can absolutely be applied to older kids. I just recommend parents get some more skin in the game. But yeah, I've had friends and other parents I've helped detox online, and it is really important with those older kids too. At the same time that you're unplugging their devices, you're cranking up that relational aspect with your kids. So especially if our kids are spending, you know, 6, 8 hours a day on their devices, especially with those tweens, you can't just unplug and like leave it at that. You need to kind of amp up that parental connection component. So it's actually really crazy because we detox our kids long time when parents need it the most. I think we've seen over the course of these lockdowns, kids have their screen time has doubled, and the mental health effects are really beginning to show. We've seen, you know, we're in the middle of the worst youth mental health crisis in ever, and every expert is saying this is a problem. You've got teachers and principals saying attention spans are down. Neurologists are saying it's a problem. Psychiatrists, speech therapists are even finding these new speech problems in young kids. But the fact of the matter is, parents, and especially your listeners, if they're parents, they're like, I don't need an expert to tell me that. I see the problem in my living room or at the kitchen table. So what parents want to know is, what is the solution? And that's why I wrote the book. It's a very practical step-by-step guide for how to do this with your kids. Because what we found is the principles can work in pretty much any family. Like, where there's a will, there's a way. And it's simpler to get your kids unstuck than you think.
That's incredible. And, you know, and the best part of all is that you have the proof. You've lived it, you've experienced it. And, you know, so you're speaking from a place of experience, which I think is, you know, invaluable for anyone who picks this book up or looks at it online and says, oh, I don't know. Well, you know, you do know because you have somebody who's not just, you know, you walk the walk and not just talk the talk, so to speak, right?
Yes, that's
Yeah, and you
definitely
did your
true.
research. Yeah, and you did your research. So, you know, you have these studies too that back up what you're saying. And like you said, you know, anybody who's a parent, even a non-parent of young kids, can look around and see that, you know, and I'm guilty of it too, that we don't engage with people the way that we used to. You know, we don't have those face-to-face conversations. Everything is online, you know, and I still remember, you know, my kids are 29 and 24, but I still remember, particularly when my youngest was a teenager, I remember her having friends over and they were all sitting on the couch looking at their phones and not talking to each other, you know, or actually come to find out, that's kind of what I said as a mom. You know, you go in there and you say, guys, do something, talk to each other. And they said, we are. And they held up their phones like, duh, you know, so this actually, you know, even delayed, it really resonates with me that, oh God, I really wish that, you know, I had done that and given them that break from it, because I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think they actually do crave it. They need that structure of somebody actually taking it away from them and forcing them to do that, because it had to be like for your kids specifically, it had to be so world opening to just kind of breathe and be a kid instead of just glued to technology, right?
100%. You're exactly right, Elsa. And it's crazy because the status quo, we look around sometimes when it comes to screen use and we say, well, how what's average? Like, how many hours are most people allowing their kids? Like, how long do you let your kids do it? And we'll stop short and say, well, my kids are using the average amount, but we're still seeing the negative effects of the screen use. And there's actually science behind it, like you were saying. So the games and apps are actually engineered to release excessive amounts of dopamine in our kids' brains. So there are these brilliant people working at these Silicon Valley companies, and they're engineering these dopamine release points into the games and apps. So your kids' brains are being flooded with this dopamine. In fact, it's such high amounts that dopamine receptors are numbing out. So real life just can't compare with the amount of dopamine that gets released in these games. So when your kids freak out after screen time, you're basically watching a dopamine crash in real time. So
Wow.
I mean, there's science behind what's going on in there. And I really believe the tide is turning because parents are looking back and seeing, wow, I think we bought into the marketing when these tablets and things came out in 2011. And meanwhile, you look back and the strictest parents when it came to technology were the very people who created it. They
Mhm.
didn't allow it. Steve Jobs didn't allow his kids to touch an iPad. So we're kind of learning more and doing better, and it's never too late to make a change.
That's a really important message, because I'm sure there's a lot of parents of kids who are, maybe early teens or just about to get into the teen years, and they might be listening to this or looking at the book and thinking, oh, I think it's too late for me. We're too far gone. We're too immersed in this tech age. I don't think we can do it. So that's a really great message to let them know that it's not too late. You can do this no matter what age your child is. Really, you can actually do this, and you break it down. I mean, you give us step by step essentially. Is that right?
Absolutely, that's completely true. And one thing that I hope encourages parents of slightly older kids. We're foster parents. We've several of our kids have come to us through foster adoption. Um, and so we've had several teenage girls in our home for short periods of time, and implementing this not with them but the culture that. So basically, the first half of the book is the detox. The second half of the book is where I help parents create their long-term plan that fits their family. So because most parents don't want to eliminate all technology forever. We don't. We love technology. It's just putting it in its right place. But because we had kind of reassessed and created a long-term plan where technology was working for us and it wasn't this like isolate and consume culture, these teenage girls who stayed with us, all of them remarked, wow, what's different? Like, there's something different here. Why would I rather like hang out with you guys than go isolate in my room? And this is not rocket science stuff. This is like basic parenting tools that have been around since forever. One of these girls came to us and her phone died right when she came. And so I let her use the landline, and then she just hung out with us and we ate peanut butter and banana sandwiches and we went for a walk. And she found me after the social worker moved her, and she sent me this long message and she said, I don't know what it was. I just liked I like being with you guys. And it's it's an encouraging story because anyone can do these things. It is so simple, and it really transforms because especially for our tweens and our teenagers, we have taken kids during their most vulnerable time, and they're so self-conscious. They haven't done that inner work of who am I and what's my place in this world and what do I believe. And before getting to do that work that like you and I got to do as awkward teenagers probably and tweens, now they're on social media and they're forced to project this persona that is literally conditional like being liked conditionally by peers or being not liked. And so it's just such shaky ground to put our kids on. Whereas the parent relationship and that parent role we get to show our kids unconditional love, and it's really powerful and transformative for them.
Absolutely. Oh gosh, you just made so many amazing points, and I'm with you 100% on this. I look on with horror at, I spend a lot of time as part of what I do, a lot of time on social media, and you see these young girls. First of all, these young girls, you're talking about 13-year-olds who are more put together physically, their hair and their makeup and their clothing. They are more put together and more fashionable. Than I am as a full grown adult. And it's alarming because they are still children. They are still children with children's minds and abilities and capabilities and understandings of the world, which obviously means very limited. So it's terrifying to see that this is what they build their whole persona and their perception of the world based on. And as a parent, it's terrifying to watch because, as you said, the effects of this affect so many aspects of their psyche and their growth as a human being. And like you said, we got to go through awkward. They don't go through an awkward phase. They're never awkward looking, these kids. At least not according to social media. But yeah, it's incredible. What would you say is, I don't want to like give away secrets from the book or anything like that, but what would you say is a reasonable amount of screen time for I don't know, let's start young. Let's say for a 4-year-old, how much screen time should a 4-year-old actually have?
That's a great question. So the beauty is, I think this will look a little different in every family. I believe that parents were put in place to study and shepherd and know their kids and to kind of assess those rules based on how their kid is wired. So, for example, you've seen, or the studies have shown that kids who have like ADHD or early exposure to trauma, sometimes they can not have as much screen time because it puts them in a bad place afterwards. So it really varies per child. But that said, I'll give you an example of what our long-term plan looks like in our family. We allow an hour a week of gaming for my older kids. So 9 and up, build in a common area of the home. They can play a video game that's approved by my, but for our little kids, 5 to 6, and so you said 4-year-olds, we do like family shows together, maybe after dinner and dishes, sometimes during the week, not every night. But other than that, we pretty much don't use a lot of technology. We're done with tablets. We found that, and studies have also shown that the interactive screens does a lot more to their brains to put them in a kind of dysregulated place than the passive shows. But that said, what we found, and this hits on a lot of what parents are afraid of when it comes to the detox. This is a huge hurdle to get over, and that is the fear of banishing the babysitter, the electronic babysitter. And I get it, because when we did our detox, I had 2 3-year-olds and I was homeschooling 2 of my kids, and this is pre-COVID. So I'm like, how am I supposed to navigate this while homeschooling? But the beauty of the detox is that it's reawakening your kids' creativity and their imagination, their ability to negotiate their boredom. So they're not going to look at the beginning how they look at the end, because they're going to learn how to, what they gravitate to, drawing or coloring or building or whatever. But yeah, you asked about 4-year-olds. I think what's really helpful is to get down to the principles of how you want technology to work in your home. So for us, and I read a lot of books on this, and I don't remember if one of them came from this or what, but we like to base our philosophy is basically we use technology to create or to connect with each other. We don't use it to isolate and consume. So that's pretty much it. And for 4-year-olds, that looks like family shows or movies.
I like that. And that's a great explanation too. You covered so many great things there. Now, one of the challenges I think also is that so much of their education now, partly or a lot to do with COVID, comes from screen time and being on the screen. How do you even navigate that? Because they already have this, almost preset amount of time that they, quote unquote, need to be online, whether it's like researching or just simply watching. How do you even navigate that? Is that like doesn't count, or it does count into their time? Does that make any sense?
100%. Yeah. So for example, when we detoxed our kids, my son's math curriculum was on the computer. So I
Mhm.
let him do his math. So what we did was we took it out for digital entertainment purposes. So that's
Okay.
what goes during the detox. I did not go into the school like for my other kids who were not being homeschooled and say, we're doing this detox, so don't let my kid watch anything. Because I just was like, oh, that's kind of but I do recommend that a lot of times parents after their detox they will have noticed and seen things in their kids that they're like, wow, they do so much better without all this. So have a conversation with your school. Our elementary school is really excited about this, so I'm actually working to try and pilot this like resources for schools so they can do a detox challenge together as a school because it's so much easier for parents. It really takes the edge off if you've got a family friend or neighbor doing it with you or someone at the school. So at least your kids are in the same boat. You can go for a hike together. Your kids can grumble about the detox together. It's okay. They can process that.
Yeah, exactly. Oh,
So
that's
yeah,
great. That's amazing. Yeah, you're making this, I'm sure like any parent who's completely immersed or their family's completely immersed in this tech age and their kids are completely, connected to their computers or phones or gaming systems, whatever the case is. I'm sure a lot of them are sitting here initially saying, "Oh God, there's no way. It's too hard. It's just impossible. There's no way we can do this." And the way that you break this down and the way you explain it, actually, like even me who's so tech addicted is like sitting here going, oh my God, yeah, no, I think I could do this. I could actually do this if you're walking me through it the way that you do in the book. As if it isn't enough to hear the actual effects and damage that it really is doing to kids, to their brains, that should be enough to do it. But yeah, you're making this sound very, very doable. So bravo for that.
well, I'm so glad that's coming across, Elsa, because that's the whole point is that it is completely doable and it's way simpler than you think on the front end. But once you get started and once you have that confidence to just put this in play and give it a shot, it will really transform your home and culture. And we had not experienced such connective times as a family and with our kids as we did at the start of our detox. It's truly the best parenting decision we have made to date. And I hear a lot of parents say this over and over. It's simpler than I thought. The results were so much better than we hoped.
Oh, that's so important, I think, for parents to hear that it's not nearly as hard as you think. And I think most of us as parents can remember when we were kids, and I think about that. And I think that's something that has to be your reference as a parent. Like, remember when you were a kid, you didn't have these things. It wasn't an option. Like you went out, and I hate to sound like that old biddy, but when I was a kid, we'd go outside and we didn't come back until the street lights came but it's
Absolutely.
true. And I have the greatest memories of childhood of playing and being out in the dirt and the sun and all of those things. And I think deep down we all want that for our kids, those same experiences. And I think when parents get to the core of that memory of their own childhoods, the actual freedom of it instead of being tethered all the time. I think they're going to probably find it so much more freeing. Is that accurate that you felt freed from all of it when you did this?
Absolutely. And also, you bring up a really good point about our own childhoods because parents today are in this very unique position because we get to look back at our childhoods and see, yeah, there was digital entertainment and technology, but like when I was a kid in the summer, I'd eat my cereal watching like The Price is Right. And then maybe I'd stay around for Little House on the Prairie, but then like MASH would come on. I'm like, I'm out. I'd rather go catch lizards than watch MASH. Like I wasn't into that show as a kid, obviously. But kids today, there is no end to digital entertainment. It is on demand, whatever you want. There's no end. And so we have this unique opportunity to show our kids what could be and to help them develop the skills that they need as adults to negotiate their own boredom, to feed their unique gifts and wiring. And that's our job as parents to kind of step in there and say, I think we're going to take a break from this just for a little while. And I'm so excited for you and for us to see what comes of it, even if you're freaking out on the inside, because I was there too. So that's why I wrote this book.
Absolutely.
It is, yeah, this is the guide I wish that I had when we started.
Understandable. I agree. Same. Absolutely. If I could go back in time, I would take this book with me for sure, with my kids. And I want to go back to something you said really, really early on, what you said to your kids. And I think it's so important for parents to remember that, incorporate that in their own conversation with their kids when they get ready to do this, which is, this is not a punishment. Nobody is in trouble. This is for your good, for your benefit, for your growth and your health. And, it's not a punishment. And I think that's like a really important part for parents to probably tell their kids. It's probably one of the first things in your book, I'm guessing, to tell them, right? Tell them it's not a punishment. They're not in trouble.
Absolutely. And that's critical because our kids are really smart. Like they're figuring out how the world works, and a lot of them see like, gosh, I don't like it when I'm in a room with someone and I'm trying to talk to them and they're staring and scrolling. Like our kids don't like that either, and they know. And so a lot of this involves, like, especially for older kids who can have a conversation about it, like asking them questions. Have you ever noticed you're in a room with someone and they're not paying attention to you, and even humbly owning like, have I ever made you feel like that? I'm sorry. It's so addictive. And for all human, if you're a human person and you have a brain, this can be addictive for you. So you're not alone, and we're going to do this thing together. And yeah, there's so much hope and so much good to come on the other side of it.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you wrote this book. I think it is going to be so beneficial to so many people. It is the Digital Detox, the 2-week tech reset for kids. And it is, I think it's an important book. And I think everyone with kids, grandkids, I've got a grandchild right now, so I'm probably going to get it for my daughter. So they have it because this, the tendency now, you see it in the restaurants all the time, some tiny little children, not my granddaughter, of course, but tiny little children with, tablets. And while the parents are talking and eating, the child is doing that, and, and they don't engage, and they don't learn how to interact. And you see it and you're like, oh, you just want to be that weird lady that goes and takes it away from them. I don't do that. I wouldn't do it. But, yeah. So this is amazing. And it gives parents, the tips and tools and skills on how to navigate it. And I think that's a wonderful thing. Molly, tell everyone where they can find this book and where they can find you. I don't know if you have a website they can go to.
I do, yes. You can find the book anywhere books are sold: Barnes and Noble, Amazon, Books a Million, christianbook.com. You can find it all of those places. Or you can find it, I have links on my website, mollydefrank.com. And actually, you had said something earlier about breaking the news to the kids. And if you pre-order the book right now, I have a sample script that it kind of guides you through. It's a pre-order bonus. There's several. Also, convincing a skeptical spouse. So like, sometimes one spouse will want to do it and the other one won't. So I have a guide for you. If you pre-order now, you can get that too. It's save the marital strife, hand them this paper. I'll help you convince them. So yeah, there's lots of good stuff on there. Check out my website, mollydefrank.com.
That's amazing. Oh my God. That's so exciting. What great resources to have, and things I didn't even think of, with the spouse that might be reluctant. And as soon as you said it, it's like, oh yeah, I could definitely see that being a thing. So you've got it all covered. That is amazing. I love it. Thank you so much, Molly, for coming on the show and sharing this information with us. I'm so grateful. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Elsa.
All right, guys, there you have it. You can actually do this. It's not nearly as hard as you're thinking. And even if you are thinking it, we've got the book for you to tell you otherwise. So thanks for watching today's show. We'll see you next week. Take care.